Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive. Today we're going to be looking at the world of rental cars.
Yeah.
Specifically, we got a ton of really cool listener-submitted stuff all about the big three, Enterprise, Avis, and Hertz.
Right.
So no matter why you're here, maybe you're planning a trip, maybe you're thinking about investing, or maybe you just like cars.
Sure.
Whatever it is, get ready, because this is going to be a wild ride.
Yeah. You might think rental cars are pretty straightforward, but actually there's a lot more to it.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
So to kick things off, let's talk about the current landscape. Like, who are the major players and how do they stack up?
Well, for years, Hertz was the top dog, right? Like the name everyone knew.
Yeah, I mean, they were everywhere.
Exactly. But things have changed. If you look at the numbers today, Enterprise is dominating. They've got a way bigger fleet, almost 4 times larger than Hertz or Avis.
Wow, that's a huge difference.
Yeah.
So, like, in terms of revenue, what does that actually look like?
Well, in 2023, Enterprise pulled in a whopping $35 billion in revenue.
$35 billion.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Hertz was lagging behind at less than $10 billion.
Okay, so it's not even close.
That's a pretty dramatic shift in power.
It really is, like a total shakeup.
Yeah.
So how did Enterprise manage this takeover? What's their secret?
Well, to get the full picture, we got to go back to the beginning.
Okay, let's rewind.
It's actually pretty interesting. All 3 companies were started by car salesmen from the Midwest.
Huh, small beginnings.
Yeah, they all started small and capitalized on new markets as they popped up.
So they had that car background in common, but then their paths really diverged. How did Enterprise set themselves apart so dramatically?
So right off the bat, Avis and Hertz went all in on airports. They figured travelers would be their main customers.
Makes sense. People flying in need a way to get around.
Right, exactly. But Enterprise did something different. They actually avoided airports at first.
Really? So they just ignored this huge market?
Well, not ignored exactly. They focused on a different customer base.
Yeah.
People who needed a car, like for local errands or while their own car was being repaired.
So they were building their foundation elsewhere.
You got it. They were playing the long game, building a strong brand before jumping into the airport battle.
That's pretty smart. Actually kind of reminds me of training in the minor leagues before hitting the majors.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. But why were airports so crucial for these companies anyway?
Well, I mean, think about it. It's like the perfect place to catch people who need a car. You're coming off a flight, you need to get to your hotel or wherever you're going.
Exactly. Airports are transportation hubs.
Yeah.
Tons of potential customers.
Makes those airport locations prime real estate.
Right, so Avis and Hertz saw that early on.
But Enterprise eventually did make it to the airport scene, right?
They did, but only after they had built a solid reputation and brand recognition.
Okay, so they waited for the right moment.
Yep, smart strategy.
It wasn't all just strategy, though, right? Marketing must have played a big role in how people saw these BMs.
Absolutely. Those iconic rental car commercials definitely shaped public perception.
Oh, yeah, we all remember those. What are some of the most memorable campaigns that come to mind?
Well, there's the classic Avis We Try Harder campaign.
Oh, yeah, that one's a classic.
Right. By owning the fact that they were number 2, they actually turned it into a strength.
Clever.
It made them seem more relatable, like they were always going the extra mile.
Yeah, I can see how that would resonate with people.
Definitely. But not all marketing campaigns are created equal.
Oh, right. Like, what about Hertz and O.J. Simpson? That didn't exactly go as planned.
Yeah, that's a cautionary tale.
Yeah.
Initially, it was a successful partnership, but then the scandal hit.
And it really hurt their image.
Big time. It's a reminder that celebrity endorsements can be risky.
For sure. Meanwhile, Enterprise had their We'll Pick You Up campaign.
Oh yeah, that was a good one.
It highlighted their unique service and reinforced that customer-focused approach.
Exactly. They were all about convenience, meeting the customer where they were.
It perfectly captured their strategy.
Totally. Now, there's another factor that's super important to understanding how these companies evolve. Ownership structure.
Okay, ownership. Let's break that down.
Yeah.
How does ownership play into all of this?
Well, Enterprise stands out because they've always been under family ownership.
So one family's been running the show the whole time.
Pretty much. Hertz and Avis, on the other hand, have had a much more turbulent history. Public creating multiple acquisitions.
So it's been a lot more chaotic for them.
Definitely.
So we've got one company with a steady hand guiding its growth, and others caught in a whirlwind of buyouts and mergers.
And that has definitely impacted how they've developed.
It makes me wonder if that stability played a role in Enterprise's rise to the top.
I think it's definitely a factor. Family ownership can foster a long-term vision. You're building something to pass down to future generations.
Right. Makes sense.
Public companies often prioritize short-term gains and shareholder pressure.
Which can lead to more risk-taking and instability.
Exactly.
So let's talk about that whirlwind you mentioned. The rental car world has seen a ton of acquisitions and mergers. Can you walk us through some of the big moves that shaped the competition?
Absolutely. So we've got the Avis Budget Group, which formed through a bunch of mergers. They acquired Budget Payless and even tried to get Dollar Thrifty.
Dollar Thrifty. Wait, wasn't there like a bidding war for them?
You're right. Hertz, feeling the pressure from Avis, jumped into the mix and ended up buying Dollar Thrifty in 2012.
For how much?
A cool $2.3 billion.
Wow, that's a lot of money.
Yeah, it was a high-stakes battle. Everyone wanted a piece of the pie.
So where was Enterprise during all of this?
Well, while those two were duking it out, Enterprise made some strategic acquisitions of their own. They bought Vanguard, the parent company of National and Alamo.
National and Alamo. Wow, that's huge.
That was a game changer. It gave them a massive boost in that all-important airport market where they had been lagging behind.
So they basically bought their way into the big leagues.
You could say that. It was a bold move, but it paid off big time. It let them rapidly expand their airport presence and compete head-to-head with Hertz and Avis.
But acquiring other companies can be risky, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. It's a complex process. But when it's done right, it can be incredibly strategic.
This makes me think about the role of automakers in all of this. I mean, rental companies need cars, right?
Absolutely. The rental car industry and automakers are super interconnected.
Right. It's like this intricate dance between them. And of course, we're all caught up in it as consumers.
Yeah, exactly. So for example, think about Chrysler. They actually owned Dollar Thrifty for a while.
Wow, I didn't know that.
And both Ford and General Motors have had major ownership stakes in Hertz, Avis, and National at different points in time.
So it's not just about renting cars, it's this whole web of interconnected industries.
Exactly. It's a fascinating ecosystem.
It really is. So after diving deep into all of this, what stands out to you the most? What's the biggest takeaway you'd want our listener to walk away with?
For me, it's the unexpected journey of these companies. Who would have thought that Enterprise, the company that started by renting cars to people with cars in the shop, would become the industry giant, surpassing even Hertz?
Yeah, you're right. It's pretty remarkable. It says a lot about their strategic thinking, their focus on customer service, and their ability to adapt to the changing market.
Exactly. They didn't just react to the industry, they actively shaped it. But this deep dive has got me thinking about what's next. The way we think about car ownership is changing fast. With ride-sharing subscription models, even self-driving cars on the horizon.
That's such a crucial point. The rental car industry is at a crossroads. As the lines between owning, renting, and subscribing get blurrier, how do you see these companies evolving to stay relevant?
Well, they're going to have to innovate, for sure. That might mean embracing new technologies, partnering with tech companies, or even creating their own mobility platforms that offer a range of transportation options.
It's like we're at the edge of the map and now it's time to chart new territory. What kind of rental experience will we see in the future? Will affordability be the main driver, or will convenience and eco-friendliness take center stage?
It's hard to say for sure. But I think we'll see a move towards more personalized and integrated experiences. Imagine a future where your rental car is seamlessly connected to your digital life. You can unlock it with your phone, adjust the temperature before you even get in, and maybe even choose from a bunch of in-car entertainment options tailored to your preferences.
Wow, it's like the rental car becomes an extension of your personal tech ecosystem.
Exactly. But with all these exciting possibilities, we can't forget about the environmental impact. With concerns about climate change and sustainability growing, how can the rental car industry address its carbon footprint?
That's a great question. The industry needs to embrace sustainability in a real way. This could involve switching to electric vehicle fleets, investing in carbon offsetting programs, or exploring alternative fuels and technologies.
You're right. It's essential for them to take action.
It sounds like the pressure is on for these companies to adapt, innovate, and maybe even reinvent themselves completely. It's a whole new ballgame.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a time of both immense challenge and opportunity for the rental car industry. And you know what, as consumers, we have a role to play in shaping its future.
That's a powerful thought. We're not just passive bystanders. We have a voice in how this industry evolves. How do you think we can exert our influence?
Our choices matter. The companies we support, the questions we ask, the features we demand, it all sends a message to the industry about what we value. For example, if we prioritize renting electric vehicles or choosing companies with strong sustainability practices, that sends a clear signal that we care about the environment and want to see change.
So it's not just about picking up a set of keys anymore. It's about making conscious decisions that align with our values and shape the world we want to live in.
Exactly. It's about making informed choices that support the kind of future we want to see. And who knows, maybe some of those choices will come directly from this deep dive. Perhaps you'll see something in a new light or be inspired to ask different questions the next time you rent a car.
Speaking of new light, you mentioned autonomous vehicles earlier. How do you see them impacting the rental car landscape?
That's where things get really interesting. Self-driving cars have the potential to totally revolutionize the rental experience. Imagine a world where you can summon a car to your exact location with a tap on your phone, and it arrives without a driver ready to take you wherever you need to go.
That sounds futuristic. But wouldn't that disrupt the traditional rental model entirely?
It very well could. It could lead to new business models, new types of rental experiences, and a complete rethinking of how we access and use vehicles.
And what about the human element? Will rental car agents become a thing of the past?
That's a good question. While technology will definitely play a bigger role, I don't think the human element will disappear completely. There will always be a need for customer service, for troubleshooting, and for those personal interactions that make the rental experience smoother and more enjoyable.
So it's like a dance between technology and human touch, each complementing the other. But with all this talk of innovation and disruption, one can't help but wonder about the fate of the big three. Will enterprise continue its reign, or will new challengers emerge to disrupt the status quo?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? The industry is ripe for disruption. We've already seen how companies like Uber and Lyft have shaken up the transportation landscape, and it's entirely possible that a new player, maybe even a tech giant, will enter the rental car arena and change the game entirely.
It's like we're watching a high-stakes poker game unfold, and the stakes are only getting higher. What advice would you give our listener who's now armed with all this knowledge about the rental car industry as they navigate this evolving landscape?
I'd say stay curious, stay informed, and don't be afraid to ask questions. The rental car experience is becoming more than just a transaction. It's a reflection of our priorities and a statement about the kind of future we envision.
So it's not just about getting from point A to point B anymore. It's about making choices that align with our values and contribute to a better, more sustainable future.
Exactly. And you, the listener, have the power to be a part of that change.
It's exciting to think that we're not just renting cars anymore, we're actually helping to shape the future of transportation. But before we get too carried away with futuristic scenarios, let's bring it back to the present. You know, as we've been talking about all these changes in the industry, I've been thinking about how the very act of renting a car has evolved over time.
That's a great observation. It used to be all about freedom, about hitting the open road, feeling the wind in your hair. Those classic rental car commercials often tapped into that sense of adventure.
Right, but now it seems like renting a car is often more about necessity than pure adventure. It's about filling a temporary gap in transportation, getting from point A to point B in a reliable and convenient way.
You're absolutely right. The emotional connection to the rental experience has shifted. We're less likely to be swayed by images of scenic highways and more focused on practical considerations, price convenience, fuel efficiency, and maybe even the environmental impact of our choices.
So with all these shifts in consumer behavior and the rise of alternative transportation options, where does that leave the traditional rental car industry? What's the road ahead?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? This deep dive has uncovered some fascinating insights into the history and evolution of the rental car industry. But the future is still unwritten. And that's where you, the listener, come in.
Okay, I'm intrigued. How can we as consumers play a role in shaping the future of this industry?
As the lines between car ownership, ride-sharing, and subscription services continue to blur, what's the future of the rental car industry? And what role might you play in shaping it? This is where your deep dives gets really interesting.
Okay, I get it. So it's not just about renting cars anymore. We're shaping the future of transportation.
Right. Our choices have an impact.
So how do we actually do that? How do we as consumers influence the direction of this industry?
It starts with awareness.
Okay.
I think this deep dive is a great first step.
Yeah, knowledge is power.
Definitely. Once you understand the landscape, the players, the trends, you can start making more informed decisions.
So what kind of decisions are we talking about?
Well, for example, are you going to prioritize renting electric vehicles?
Okay, so choosing EVs over gas guzzlers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or how about supporting companies that have strong sustainability practices?
Yeah, that makes sense.
These are the kinds of choices that send a message to the industry.
Like voting with our wallets.
Precisely. It's about aligning your spending with your values.
And ultimately pushing for the changes we want to see.
You got it. The more consumers demand sustainable and innovative options, the more companies will respond.
So it's not just about getting from point A to point B anymore.
Right. It's about being conscious of the impact our choices have.
Speaking of impact, let's talk about autonomous vehicles. You mentioned them earlier. how do you see self-driving cars fitting into the rental car landscape?
Oh man, that's a whole other can of worms.
Yeah, it's pretty mind-blowing to think about.
Self-driving cars have the potential to completely revolutionize the rental experience.
In what way?
Well, imagine this. You need a car. You pull out your phone, tap a few buttons, and a car shows up at your location. No driver needed, ready to take you wherever you want to go.
Wow, that sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie.
I know, right? It's wild to think about.
Yeah.
But it could become reality sooner than we think.
But wouldn't that totally disrupt the traditional rental model?
It definitely could. We might see new business models pop up, new types of rental experiences, even a complete reimagining of how we use and access vehicles.
So the whole industry could be turned upside down.
It's definitely possible.
Yeah.
And that brings up another interesting question. What happens to rental car agents in this self-driving future?
Yeah, will they become obsolete?
Well, technology will definitely play a bigger role, but I don't think human interaction will completely disappear.
Okay, so there's still a place for people.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There will always be a need for customer service, troubleshooting, and those personal touches that make the rental experience smoother.
It's like a balance between technology and human interaction.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Each one complementing the other. But with all this talk about innovation and disruption, one can't help but wonder about the big players. Will enterprise maintain its dominance, or will new challengers emerge?
Yeah, the future is uncertain.
It really is. The industry is ripe for disruption. We've already seen how companies like Uber and Lyft have shaken things up.
True.
And it's entirely possible that a new player, maybe even a tech giant, will enter the rental car game and change everything.
It's like a high-stakes poker game with the ante constantly going up.
Exactly. So what advice would you give our listener who's now armed with all this knowledge about the rental car industry as they navigate this ever-changing landscape?
That's a good question. What would you say?
Well, first I'd say stay curious. Keep learning about the industry and how it's evolving.
Okay, so don't get complacent.
Right. And stay informed about new technologies, new companies, new trends.
So basically be aware of what's happening.
Exactly. And most importantly, don't be afraid to ask questions. Challenge the status quo. Demand better options.
So be an active participant, not just a passive consumer.
Yes, the rental car experience is more than just a transaction. It's a reflection of our priorities and a statement about the future we want to create.
So it's about making choices that align with our values and contribute to a better, more sustainable world.
You got it. And you, the listener, have the power to make a difference.
That's empowering.
It is. We're not just renting cars anymore. We're shaping the future of transportation.
I like that. It's exciting to think about all the possibilities.
Me too. The road ahead is full of potential.
But before we get too caught up in futuristic scenarios, let's bring it back to the present. You know, as we've been discussing all these industry changes, I've been reflecting on how the actual experience of renting a car has transformed over time.
That's an interesting point. How so?
Well, it used to be all about freedom, hitting the open road, feeling the wind in your hair.
Yeah, those classic rental car commercials definitely played on that sense of adventure.
Right. But now it seems like renting a car is often more about practicality than pure enjoyment.
You're right. It's about filling a temporary gap in transportation, getting from point A to point B reliably and conveniently.
Exactly. It's less about the emotional experience and more about the functional needs.
I think you've hit the nail on the head. There's been a shift in the emotional connection to the rental experience.
We're less likely to be swayed by images of scenic highways and more focused on things like price convenience and fuel efficiency.
And let's not forget about the environmental impact. That's becoming a bigger consideration for many people.
Absolutely. So with all these changes in consumer behavior and the rise of alternative transportation options like ride sharing and subscription services, where does this leave the traditional rental car industry? What's the road ahead?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It's a big one.
This deep dive has given us some amazing insights into the history and evolution of the rental car industry.
Definitely.
But the future is still unwritten. And that's where you, the listener, come in.
Okay, I'm all ears. How can we as consumers help shape the future of this industry?
As the lines between car ownership, ride-sharing, and subscription services continue to blur, what's the future of the rental car industry? And what role might you play in shaping it? This is where your deep dive gets really interesting.
Okay, I see what you mean. So like we have this opportunity to steer the industry in a new direction.
Exactly. Your choices as a consumer can have a real impact.
So it's not just about getting a car for a few days anymore.
Right. It's about considering the bigger picture. What kind of rental experience do you want? What features matter to you? What values are you supporting?
It's like we're not just renting a car, we're shaping the future of transportation.
I love that. That's a great way to put it.
So what are some things listeners should keep in mind when they're making these choices?
Well, think about the kind of car you choose. Are you going to opt for an electric vehicle or a hybrid?
Okay, so considering the environmental impact.
Right. And what about the rental company itself? Do they have strong sustainability practices? Are they investing in new technologies?
So doing a little research before we book.
Exactly. It's worth taking the time to find a company that aligns with your values.
It's like voting with our wallets.
Exactly. And remember, you can always ask questions. Don't be afraid to inquire about a company's sustainability initiatives or their plans for the future.
So being an informed and engaged consumer.
That's the key. The more we demand better options, the more the industry will respond.
It's exciting to think that we have this power to influence change.
It really is. And who knows, maybe some of you listening will come up with the next big innovation in the rental car world.
That would be amazing to see a listener's idea come to life.
It would be a testament to the power of curiosity and the importance of challenging the status quo.
Well said. So as we wrap up this deep dive into the rental car industry, what's the one thing you want listeners to take away from all of this?
I think the biggest takeaway is that the rental car experience is evolving rapidly. And we as consumers have a role to play in shaping its future.
So it's not just about getting from point A to point B anymore.
Right, it's about making conscious choices that align with our values and contribute to a better, more sustainable world.
And who knows, maybe even having a little fun along the way.
Absolutely. Because at the end of the day, it's still about the journey.
Well said. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the world of rental cars.
It's been my pleasure.
Until next time, happy travels, everyone.